I asked, how is that possible?
So let me frame it this way. So there's disciplines that are called meta disciplines, right? Meta ethics, meta mathematics, meta logic. These are real disciplines that people study. Now, one could say that they're not real disciplines and dismiss it or whatever. But when we talk about giving a justification or giving an explanation for things, or explaining how they could be in the rest of one's worldview, I don't think that that's an invalid question. And you've said that you don't believe that it needs a justification. You can say that that's not arbitrary, but to me, it sounds arbitrary. On the worldview where God exists, there's regularity in nature because of providence, because God has set the world up to be regular. And that's how we can do the scientific method. That's how we can do logic. That's how we can do math. The world operates in a regular way. But when we don't have that, and we just say that we only have our immediate sense experience, we only have what's pragmatic, then we're led to these foolish conclusions. Well, I would reply by saying that you claim to be a proponent of the skeptical tradition, that you're within that tradition of skepticism. And I'm very read in that tradition, and I respect a lot of areas of the skeptical tradition. But whether we go back to Descartes and his meditations when he begins to question things, or whether it's Hume, or whether it's the more modern skeptics, they're very interested in questioning justification, questioning epistemic claims, questioning meta level questions. They're asking all those meta level questions. They're very interested in how we do or can't justify laws of logic, numbers, all those different things. So it's not unfair to bring those issues up, because they're the heart of the issue, especially in the history of epistemology. I mean, you can read an epistemology textbook that's common, Bonjour, something like this, and you'll find that the whole of the textbook is debates about coherentism and foundationalism and justifying claims. Now, one could say, I don't really care, or it doesn't matter to me, or whatever. But in a debate, what's presupposed is some question or some rule, right, by which we go by these rules to confirm or deny the case, right? And I think what you've missed, or tended to miss, is that the transcendental argument is not just an argument that's a reductio against some other position. It's a positive argument that's about all of those transcendental categories. And if those transcendental categories are actually necessary, and if they're actually very strong arguments themselves, then the argument for God itself is also strong, and it's also a positive argument. It's not just a negative argument about, well, I can find a flaw in your worldview, therefore mine's true. That's not the totality of the argument. The totality of the argument is that this worldview is coherent because I can look at all those different paradigmatic claims and preconditions, and they make sense, they're coherent. When I look at the system over here, and you can say I don't have a system, you can say, I'm not saying that you said that, but a person could say as a skeptic, I don't have a holistic system, I just have the best that I can go by with maximal certainty and pragmatic approaches. But that still has claims that are necessary and implicit about metaphysics, about epistemology, and about ethics. Even if you don't want to go down any of those specific routes, it still has a necessary implication. If I were to say I'm a total skeptic and I don't think that I know anything is true, that's still a claim about metaphysics, about ethics, and about epistemology, even if I don't want it to go there. It is pretty consistent with a coherence type of view in terms of epistemology. So I would say that if one makes a fundamental paradigmatic flaw in one's epistemology, then their worldview and their system completely breaks down and is incoherent. Like, for example, if I say, I don't believe that there's an external world, right, or something like this would be so fundamental. If I don't believe that there's logic, right, that would be so fundamental that our whole system would collapse. And again, historically, nobody's had a problem asking, can we investigate and justify these kinds of claims? And I know that Matt's not saying that you can't ask those things, but he's saying that he's not convinced that there is a need to justify those kinds of claims and those kinds of positions. And again, I still think that it's arbitrary to say that I don't know and they don't require it, because if you're going to utilize things, if you're going to believe in things and act as if those things are the case, there's nothing wrong with me in a debate asking for the justification for those kinds of things, because it's the same kind of question that you would ask about a theist. Now, the argument is that, and Matt many times said, but you're saying that God is circular and you don't have to give a justification for God. I'm saying that the justification for God is the transcendental argument, and all systems ultimately are circular at their root. Yes, absolutely. Because you can never ultimately get past some final authority, right? But to say that that's not an argument, as I think just flatly incorrect. It is an argument. It's a transcendental argument, and transcendental arguments are valid arguments. Now, again, one could deny that, but the fact that if we deny transcendental arguments leads us to absurdities, that's the reductio, right? And that would prove that they are valid arguments in a logical sense if something leads to a reductio, right?